For this next video, we're going to explore some alternative approaches to crop insurance, namely using SCO and ECO to potentially raise the level of coverage while managing down crop insurance costs. Recall we have an 85% RP policy, farm-based policy for each of corn and beans. We have a 40% of our grain sold, and we've got variable land rent in place. And this is the picture of the risk profile that we face under various price and yield circumstances. And you can see that we still have some pretty material downside here in this area, and that's a difficult area to protect against using traditional farm-based revenue protection policies because they won't kick in until the 85% level. I'll just show you that briefly. So here's the indemnity provisions. Indemnity plans are kicking in there in this 85% level. And so it's hard to fill that hole without increasing the coverage level. And that's what we're going to talk about with SCO and ECO. First of all, what I want to do is go back and look at something that we haven't paid much attention to previously, but I want to go back and revisit. First of all, you remember that when we pulled up our models and our generic models, and they produced a farm yield of 213 bushels an acre for corn, for example, and that was representative of our farm. You'll note that the county yields that came in were identical to the models that we brought down. Well, that's not always the case, and sometimes a farm can consistently outperform the county. And in this particular case, there's a clue that that might be the case as it relates to our crop insurance. Recall that our approved yield for our farm for corn was 210 bushels an acre, but the county benchmark yield was 191.9. Madison County has pretty highly varied soils, and certain producers can drive considerably higher yields than others, particularly for corn. And this would suggest to us that if we go back to that prior page, that may not be a good assumption for our county yields. This county yield is probably going to be considerably lower. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to edit that, and I'm going to say our county yield is not 213, but it's really 200. That's what we would expect our county to yield, and we expect to do 13 bushels an acre better than the county. Now we've established that relationship, and why is this important? Well, the only reason we have county yield in the model at all is for county-based crop insurance policies, either area policies, county policies, or the county-based supplements that we're going to talk about next, called ECO and SCO. So I guess a re-review of these are important. I think as I look over beans and DC beans and wheat, I think we're okay on those as it stands, but I do think it's important that you need to look at those county yields that you're assuming and make sure there's not a consistent difference in what you're assuming initially as compared to what you think is the reality. So we just raised our expectations for county yield to 200 bushels an acre. Now we're going to go in back over here to our crop acreage and crop insurance. And here, in lieu of an 85% policy for corn and beans, farm-based policy, we're going to explore the possibility of dropping the base coverage level and then supplementing that through the use of SCO and ECO to get to a higher level than 85, in this case 90%. And so I'll walk you through that example in a moment. What's important to understand is to take this approach, it's important that the farm's yields correlate with the county. They don't have to be identical to the county, but they move up and down together. So this ECO and SCO tool is really best used by by farmers that are highly correlated to county yields. And that typically comes from being spread out in the county, and it probably helps being larger farms so that you have less um, field specific risk. So you're larger, more spread out, and most importantly, at the end of the day, are correlated with county yields. If you believe that that is a reasonable risk that the farmer can take, there's some advantages to using SCO and ECO. So it's not appropriate for most farmers, many farmers, but certain farmers can avail themselves of this opportunity. So what we're going to do now is edit these, and we're going to instead of going to a 85% standard RP policy, we're going to drop this policy level down, and let's just drop it down to, let's say, the 75% level. So now we're insuring only to the 75% level, but we're going to add SCO, and that'll take us up to the 86% level. And then ECO, we're going to take that to the 90% level. So we just bought ourselves 5% higher coverage than we had before. However, we've substituted farm-based at 85 to farm-based at 75, and county-based getting us up to the 90% level. We're going to do that for corn. Now we would do this. I'm going to do this for beans also, but an important consideration is as it relates to our title decisions. Which why are we raising title? Well, the USDA has rules that say that you cannot have your title in ARCO if you want to use the SCO supplemental coverage option. You need to have it in PLC. That's because I think they don't want to double down on revenue-based subsidized approaches. So here, what we're going to do, we have to do this, and if we didn't do this, we didn't think about it, we would get an error message that says you need to make this adjustment. We're going to convert, we're going to move our bean base acres out of PLC, out of ARCO and into PLC. Okay, now let me go back over here to the crop insurance section. We will now be allowed to do what we wanted to do a second ago, which was to select 75% farm-based policy, and then add our SCO and ECO to 90%. And that's what we wanted to do. And then, as we've talked about previously, the bean crop has to follow one another. So basically the DC beans and the full season beans will be automatically 75% RP, 90% ECO, yes for SCO. You can see that does the same thing for the DC beans. So we're now, what we've done is we've changed from an 85% farm-based RP policy to a stack of a 75% RP policy farm-based, supplemented up to the 90% level using county-based metrics. So let's see what that does to our overall picture. Well, first, what we'll do is we'll take a look at our sensitivity tables. And you can see that this is an improved picture than what we saw before. And why is that? Because we're getting indemnity payments, which I can show you, at a higher level than previously. It's coming in. Recall earlier it was coming in here, and now we're getting additional payments earlier. And if you wanted to show the farm cash flow, let's look at the differences from what we did previously. You'll be able to see that. Interestingly, this policy is $12,000 cheaper, so we got higher coverage up to the 90% level, and we're paying, in this example, $12,000 less. So we're better off in our base case, and we're better off in all other cases because we basically bought a higher policy, and we're getting those benefits. the insurance indemnification payments kicking in earlier than they would have under an 85% policy. So this is an attractive alternative for those farmers that can feel comfortable that their yields will remain correlated with the county. Clearly, if the county does very well and the farm does badly, this would be a bad bet, because you would not be receiving the indemnity payments that you might have expected had you insured your farm. Alternatively, you could have a windfall and the farm could do well and the county could do badly, and you'd get an indemnity payment. So it can go both ways, but typically you want to insure yourself for those events where you really need the insurance. So this is an attractive way for certain farmers to be able to pick up additional coverage at, in fact, a lower cost, as long as they're willing to accept the correlation risk. A couple of quick caveats, because for a traditional revenue protection policy and RP policy, those indemnity payments are paid basically right after harvest, as soon as the farm's yields are known. By contrast, the ECO and SCO portions of the stack, they're not paid out until the following summer, June and July timeframe, when the RMA finalizes county yields and therefore can calculate those indemnity dollar amounts. So there's a time lapse for the receipt of those indemnity payments. So from a cash flow perspective, you're going to receive some of those payments later on. And also, to the extent you move down to a 75% RP policy, you will, for prevent plant, for example, your prevent plant coverage will follow that 75% level, and it will be less attractive than the prevent plant at 85%. So there are some downsides, but overall, certain farmers can avail themselves of a lower cost policy that offers higher levels of protection that then helps cushion the downside as long as their yields remain correlated with the county.